The hotel lobby smelled like money. That particular kind of money, old and certain of itself, the kind that didn't need to announce anything because everything already knew. Clifford Harton walked in through the revolving glass door at 2:14 on a Tuesday afternoon wearing a canvas work jacket, dark jeans with a crease worn into the left knee, and a pair of boots that had seen better decades. He carried a manila envelope tucked under one arm and a paper cup of gas station coffee in the other hand. He moved slowly, the way a man moves when he's got nowhere to be at any particular speed. The Caldwell Grand had 62 floors, 4 restaurants, a rooftop bar that charged $40 for a cocktail, and a lobby that had been photographed for 3 different architecture magazines in the last 8 years. The marble floors were the kind you could see your own face in if you looked down long enough. Most guests didn't look down. They kept their chins up, their rollerboard luggage clicking behind them, their eyes scanning for the elevator bank or the concierge desk. Clifford Harton looked at the floor for a moment. Then he looked up. He walked toward the seating area near the east windows. 4 low chairs arranged around a glass table, a vase of white orchids in the center, the afternoon light coming in at a long angle. He chose the chair nearest the window and sat down. He sat there for maybe 4 minutes before Donovan Siebert noticed him. Donovan Siebert had been a front desk associate at the Caldwell Grand for 2 years and 3 months. In that time, he had developed a precise and efficient system for reading people the moment they walked through the door. He categorized them without thinking about it. The way a sommelier categorizes wine by color before they even lift the glass. Business class, leisure, honeymoon, conference. There were other categories, too, ones Donovan had never said out loud, but that lived in the back of his mind like furniture he'd stopped noticing because it had always been there. He looked at the man in the canvas jacket, sitting in the east alcove, the paper cup, the envelope, the boots. He leaned slightly toward the security podium where Russ Galloway was standing with his hands behind his back, scanning the lobby with the measured patience of a man who charged by the hour. "Third chair from the window," Donovan said quietly. Russ Galloway looked. He straightened. He walked over. Clifford Harton was looking at the orchids when Russ stopped in front of him. "Excuse me, sir." The "sir" had a texture to it, the kind that isn't actually a courtesy. "Are you a registered guest here?" Clifford Harton looked up. His face was the color of dark mahogany, and his eyes were the kind of quiet that takes a long time to grow. He was 56 years old, but he carried it differently than most people carry 56. Not old, exactly, settled. Like something that had been tested many times and had come through still standing. "I'm not," he said. "Then I'm going to have to ask you to step outside. This seating area is reserved for registered guests and dining patrons." Clifford Harton looked at the orchids again for a moment. Then he set his paper cup down on the glass table. "I'm meeting someone," he said. "Sir, I understand that. But if your party isn't currently a registered guest—" "I'm not waiting for a guest," Clifford Harton said. "I'm waiting for the general manager." Russ Galloway pulled back slightly, just a fraction of an inch. His expression didn't change, but something moved behind it. "The general manager?" "That's right. And what would this be regarding?" Clifford Harton looked at him for a long moment. "I think that's probably between me and the general manager," he said. Russ Galloway's jaw tightened. He looked at the envelope under Clifford Harton's arm. Then he looked back at the front desk where Donovan Siebert was watching. "Sir, I'm going to need you to wait outside while I check on that." "I'll wait right here," Clifford Harton said. The lobby was not empty. A woman in a gray blazer was crossing toward the elevator bank, pulling a carry-on. 2 men in business suits were having a conversation near the concierge desk, one of them gesturing with his room key card. A family with a stroller was negotiating the path from the entrance to the check-in line. None of them were paying attention to the east alcove. And yet the moment had a weight to it that Clifford Harton had felt before many times in many different rooms. The weight of a room deciding what to do with you. Russ Galloway spoke quietly into his radio. The response crackled back. Then he came back and stood in front of Clifford Harton with his shoulders squared. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." Clifford Harton did not move. "On what grounds?" "You're not a registered guest. You don't have a dining reservation. This is private property, and I told you I'm here to meet with your general manager." Clifford Harton's voice had not changed volume or temperature. It was the kind of calm that isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of something. Stillness as a choice. "I'd like to wait." Russ Galloway reached down and put his hand on Clifford Harton's arm, not gripping, not yanking, just placing, the way you place your hand on something to move it. Clifford Harton looked down at that hand. "Don't do that," he said quietly. The two men in business suits near the concierge desk had stopped their conversation. The woman in the gray blazer had paused near the elevator bank. Russ Galloway did not remove his hand. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave. If you refuse, I will need to involve the police." "Remove your hand," Clifford Harton said. Donovan Siebert had come around from behind the front desk now. He was walking toward the alcove with his best customer service posture. Shoulders back, face neutral. The face of a man who has been trained to de-escalate, though de-escalation in this case meant one specific thing: getting Clifford Harton to the door. "Sir," Donovan said, arriving, "I understand there may be some confusion. Let me see if I can help clarify." "He says he has a meeting with the GM," Russ said. "Sir, do you have the name of the person you're expecting to meet?" "I can certainly call up and check. The general manager's name," Clifford Harton said, "is whoever currently holds that position. I don't know their name because I haven't introduced myself yet." He paused, which is what I was waiting to do. Donovan looked at Russ. Russ looked at Donovan. "Sir," Donovan said, his voice taking on a new quality, patient, the way someone is patient when they believe the other person is not quite following. "Perhaps I'm not being clear. The Caldwell Grand is a private establishment. Without a reservation or a registered stay, we can't accommodate. I own this hotel," Clifford Harton said. The lobby did not go silent because it was not a small room. The ambient sound continued, the distant ding of an elevator, the soft percussion of luggage wheels, the murmur of the check-in line. But in the east alcove, something happened that was like silence, even though it wasn't. Donovan Siebert blinked. Russ Galloway's hand was still on Clifford Harton's arm. Clifford Harton looked at him again. Just looked, patient as stone. Russ removed his hand. Sir, I don't think." "The acquisition closed 9 days ago," Clifford Harton said. He reached into the manila envelope and withdrew a single document. He didn't hand it over immediately. He just held it. "Harton Capital Partners acquired the Caldwell Group, which includes this property and 4 others on the 14th of last month. The paperwork has been filed. The regional board has been notified." He paused. "I'm here today on what I had hoped would be an informal introductory visit. I wanted to see the property as a guest would see it." He set the document on the glass table next to his paper cup of gas station coffee. Donovan Siebert looked at the document. His face was doing something complicated. "As it turns out," Clifford Harton said, "I've seen quite a bit." Here is what Donovan Siebert was thinking in that moment, though he would never have admitted it to anyone, not even himself, not even later when the whole thing was over and he was sitting in his car in the parking garage going back over every second of it. He was thinking, it shouldn't matter. He was thinking, it was reasonable. He was thinking, I followed protocol. And all of those thoughts were real, in a sense. They were genuinely what he believed. But they were also the thoughts of a man who had made a decision in the first 4 seconds of seeing Clifford Harton and had spent the next 20 minutes defending it without ever once naming it. That is how it usually works. That is how it has always worked. You don't have to say what you mean. You just have to mean what you do. Russ Galloway was 44 years old and had been in private security for 11 years. Before that, he'd spent 8 years in law enforcement. He knew how to read rooms, and he knew how to read people, and he believed genuinely that he was good at his job. He believed that his instincts were trained, not biased. He believed there was a difference. He looked at the document on the table. He looked at Clifford Harton. "Sir," he said, and this time the word had no texture to it at all. It was just a word. Clifford Harton picked up his paper cup, took a slow sip, set it back down. "I'd like you to call whoever is currently managing this property," he said. "Tell them that Clifford Harton is in the lobby. Tell them I've been here for approximately 22 minutes. The woman in the gray blazer who had paused near the elevator bank had not moved. She was standing with her carry-on, her hand on the handle, watching. She was not the only one watching. A young couple near the check-in line had gone still. One of the business suit men from near the concierge desk had drifted, almost without seeming to, a few steps closer to the alcove. Donovan Siebert had his phone out. He was making a call. Clifford Harton looked at the orchids. He had grown up in Baltimore, the second of 4 children, in a house that his mother kept clean with a particular kind of ferocity. Not because she cared about cleanliness as an idea, but because the house was the one thing in the neighborhood that nobody could say anything about. He had watched her scrub that kitchen floor on her hands and knees on a Saturday afternoon, and he had understood, even as a child, that she was scrubbing at something that wasn't on the floor, that she was fighting a battle with whatever bristlebrush came to hand. And he had decided, at some age he couldn't now name, that he was going to fight that same battle with whatever tools he could get a hold of. He had spent 31 years building those tools. He looked at the orchids and thought that they were probably changed out twice a week at minimum, that there was a contract with a local florist, that whoever was running this property cared about appearance more than logistics. Not a condemnation, just an observation. The kind of thing you notice when you've owned buildings long enough. He was thinking about the florist contract when Pauline Wexler arrived. Pauline Wexler was the Caldwell Grand's general manager. She was 51 years old, from Phoenix originally, and she had been in hotel management for 23 years. She was good at her job in the way that matters, not the way of grand gestures, but the way of 10,000 small correct decisions. She knew which housekeeper was going through something and needed a shift adjustment. She knew which restaurant vendor was about to raise prices and had already sourced a backup. She knew the names of the regulars at the rooftop bar and the preferences of the top 10 corporate accounts. She arrived in the east alcove with her blazer buttoned and her face carrying the expression of a woman who had been told something she was hoping was not true. She looked at Donovan Siebert. She looked at Russ Galloway. She looked at the document on the glass table. Then she looked at Clifford Harton. "Mr. Harton," she said. "Mrs. Wexler," he said. He had done his reading before he came. "Sit down if you like." She sat in the chair across from him. Her posture was straight, the posture of someone who has trained themselves out of the instinct to collapse. "I owe you an apology," she said. "You do," he said. "Though I suspect you know that what you owe me is less important right now than understanding what happened here and making sure it doesn't define what happens next." Pauline Wexler looked at her hands for a moment. Just briefly, then back up. "Walk me through it," she said. "I walked in at 2:14. I sat down. Security approached me within 4 minutes. By 2:27, I had been asked to leave the property twice and had a hand placed on my arm." He picked up the paper cup. "I've been sitting in this chair ever since." Pauline Wexler's expression did not change. She had too many years of practice for that. But something around her eyes shifted. Not emotion, exactly. More like calculation. The rapid and involuntary calculation of someone assessing the full weight of a situation. Donovan Siebert was still standing nearby. Russ Galloway had stepped back, a careful 3 feet, as though distance were a form of innocence. Clifford Harton looked at Donovan. "What made you call security?" he asked. Question was not loud, it was not angry. It was the kind of question that expects an honest answer and will know the difference if it doesn't get one. Donovan Siebert's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You didn't have a reservation," he said. Clifford Harton said. "That's the part that's true. What's the part you're leaving out?" The lobby moved around them. The check-in line shuffled forward. An elevator opened and released 3 people with luggage. The marble floor reflected the afternoon light in long, pale stripes. Donovan Siebert said nothing. "That's what I thought," Clifford Harton said. Not unkindly, just accurately. He looked at Pauline Wexler. "Your people need training," he said. "Not the kind about policy. Policy is fine. Most hotels have adequate policy. What they don't have is a culture that practices the policy honestly, without exceptions that nobody writes down because they don't have to." Pauline Wexler nodded once, small and precise. "I'd like to understand," she said carefully, "what you'd like to happen next." Clifford Harton leaned back in the chair. The afternoon light had shifted. It came in at a lower angle now, catching the edge of the glass table, scattering into pieces. "I want to take a walk," he said. "I'd like you to walk with me through this property. Not as a tour, not the version you give investors. The real one. Loading dock, staff break room, the back corridor by housekeeping." He paused. "I want to see what this place looks like from the inside." Pauline Wexler stood up. Clifford Harton stood up too. He tucked the manila envelope back under his arm. He left the paper cup on the glass table. He looked at Russ Galloway. "What's your name?" he asked. "Russ Galloway, sir." Clifford Harton studied him for a moment. "You've got 11 years in security. Military before that?" Russ Galloway blinked. "Law enforcement. Same instinct. Different uniform." Clifford Harton's voice wasn't soft, but it wasn't hard either. I'm not going to make a decision about your employment today, but I want you to sit with something. I want you to ask yourself, not out loud, just to yourself, what information you actually had when you put your hand on my arm. Write down the list. Be honest about it." He paused. "Then I want you to ask yourself what was on the list and what wasn't." Russ Galloway said nothing. "That's all," Clifford Harton said. He turned and walked toward the corridor that led to the service areas. Pauline Wexler fell into step beside him. The housekeeping floor smelled like industrial detergent and fabric softener, and something underneath both of those, something human. The smell of people who work hard in rooms that guests never see. The hallway was narrow and lit with fluorescent tubing that buzzed slightly at one end, a bulb starting to go. Clifford Harton noted the bulb. He noted the break room, which was clean but had a coffee maker with a cracked carafe that someone had taped along the crack with electrical tape. He noted the single folding table, the 4 mismatched chairs, the corkboard on the wall with the schedule pinned up, and 3 different birthday cards, handmade, the kind with construction paper and marker, taped alongside it. A woman came around the corner with a cart of folded towels. She was wearing the housekeeping uniform, a royal blue smock, and she was moving fast, the efficient speed of someone with 15 rooms left on a shift. She looked up when she saw Clifford Harton and Pauline Wexler. Her expression shifted through 3 things very quickly: surprise, assessment, uncertainty about how to behave. "Good afternoon," Clifford Harton said. "Good afternoon, sir," she said. She kept moving. She had 15 rooms left, and she had learned over many years not to slow down for people in suits who walked through the back corridors because those people didn't usually slow down for her. Clifford Harton watched her go. "What's her name?" he asked Pauline Wexler. Pauline Wexler paused for only a half second. Ranella J. She's been with us for 6 years." Clifford Harton nodded. "She's got a bulb going in that corridor, and the break room could use a real coffee maker." Pauline Wexler took out her phone and made a note. She did it without comment, without the particular defensiveness of someone who's being criticized, which Clifford Harton noted too. "How long have you been managing this property?" he asked as they moved down the corridor. 4 years this spring," Pauline said. "Before that, the Harrington in Seattle for 5 years. Before that, I did regional ops for a mid-market chain in the Southwest. You ever own anything?" Pauline Wexler glanced at him sideways. "No, what would you do differently if you did?" She was quiet for a long moment. They walked past the laundry room, past the supply cage with its industrial shelving, stacked with cleaning products and toilet paper, and the folded paper sachets that went over toilet seats. Past the mechanical room. Past a door marked maintenance, off personal only, that had a handwritten sign below the official one saying please close fully AC leak, and below that someone had drawn a small hand-drawn arrow pointing at the door handle. "I'd change the break room," Pauline Wexler said finally. "It's the same break room we had when I arrived, and I've put in 2 requests for an upgrade, and both of them came back denied from corporate because it's not a guest-facing expenditure." Clifford Harton stopped walking. He looked at the door at the end of the corridor, which led back out to the service elevator lobby. "Corporate," he said. "The previous ownership group." Clifford Harton turned and looked at her. "Make the request again," he said. "New ownership. Put a real coffee maker in there. Real chairs. Something for the people who are actually holding this property together every day." He paused. "Submit it to my office." "Wexler, we'll get it done." Pauline Wexler looked at him for a moment with an expression that was trying very hard to stay professional and not quite managing it. "Yes, sir," she said. They came back out through the service elevator lobby and took the elevator up to the rooftop. The rooftop bar was not open yet. It opened at 5, but the prep staff was there, cutting fruit and stocking the ice bins and polishing glasses. The skyline spread out around them. In the pale late afternoon light, the city arranged like a schematic of itself. Towers and bridges, and the dark ribbon of the river turning slowly in the distance. Clifford Harton stood at the railing and looked at it. He thought about his mother's kitchen floor. He thought about the 31 years. He thought about the first building he had ever bought, a 4-unit rental property in East Baltimore in 1998, which he had closed on at a folding table in a title company office wearing the only blazer he owned, which had a slight pull at the left shoulder seam that he'd been meaning to fix since he bought it at a Goodwill on Pratt Street. He thought about how the title company attorney had looked at him across that folding table with the same look that Donovan Siebert had used today in the lobby, a look that lasted only a fraction of a second before the professional face came back, but that he had caught and filed and added to the long document he carried in his head. He had filled a lot of pages in that document. He had also bought a lot of buildings. "Mr. Harton," Pauline Wexler said. She was standing a respectful distance away, giving him the railing. For what it's worth." She paused. "I'm sorry about what happened downstairs." "Not sorry in the liability sense. Just sorry." Clifford Harton turned away from the skyline. He looked at her. "I know the difference," he said. "I know you do." He looked down at the city again. The river had caught some of the late light. It looked almost gold from up here. "I'm not going to make today about punishment," he said. "That's not what I came for, and it's not what I want. I want this property to run well. I want the people who work here to have what they need. I want a guest to walk through that lobby, any guest, and be treated like they belong there." He paused. "Not like they're being assessed." Pauline Wexler said nothing. "What I saw today," Clifford Harton said, "is a culture problem. Culture problems don't get fixed with memos. They get fixed slowly, with decisions that cost something, and with people at the top modeling something different every single day." He looked at her. "Can you do that?" Pauline Wexler met his eyes. "Yes," she said, "I can." He held her gaze for a moment longer. Then he nodded. "Then let's talk about the next 6 months." They talked for 2 hours. They sat at one of the rooftop tables, not inside at a conference table with a projector and a slide deck, but out here in the open air with the city going orange around them and the prep staff finishing their work a discreet distance away. Clifford Harton asked questions that weren't on any acquisition checklist. Questions about staff retention and shift fairness, and the 3 housekeepers Pauline had almost lost in January because of a scheduling conflict that nobody senior had taken seriously until it was almost too late. He asked about the florist contract, which turned out to be exactly as he'd suspected, and he made a note to look at it. He asked about the rooftop bar's slowest nights and why she thought it was slow, and whether the pricing reflected the actual cost of the experience or just what someone thought the market would bear. Pauline Wexler answered everything. She answered it cleanly, without spinning anything, without the particular kind of practiced optimism that general managers sometimes deploy when they're being evaluated. She answered like someone who had been waiting for someone to ask. By the time the rooftop bar opened at 5 and the first evening guests began arriving, Clifford Harton and Pauline Wexler had covered the structural renovation in the northwest stairwell that had been deferred twice. The sous chef in the third-floor restaurant who had a James Beard nomination and was about to be poached by a competitor if someone didn't counter, and a proposed redesign of the check-in process that Pauline had drafted 8 months ago and never been able to get a senior ear on. A bartender came over and asked if they wanted anything. Clifford Harton looked at the menu. He ordered a sparkling water. Pauline Wexler ordered the same. The bartender went away. The city had gone full dark now beyond the railing, the skyline holding up its lights against the night sky. "One more thing," Clifford Harton said. "Yes, downstairs, the man from the front desk." Pauline Wexler waited. "Donovan," Clifford Harton said. "I want him to complete a full bias awareness training, not the checkbox version, a real one with follow-up." He paused. "And I want it to be an all-staff training. Not just him, everyone." Pauline Wexler nodded. "And Galloway?" "Galloway I want to keep," Clifford Harton said. "He was wrong, and he needs to understand why, but he's been in security 11 years and he didn't get aggressive when I pushed back, which tells me something. That's trainable." He paused. "Some things are trainable. Some things are character. He's got the character." Pauline Wexler looked at him. "You're not what I expected," she said. She said it carefully, not as a compliment exactly, but as an observation that she'd been holding for 2 hours and had finally decided it was honest enough to offer. Clifford Harton considered that for a moment. "I'm exactly what you should have expected," he said. "You just didn't have the right information going in." He picked up his sparkling water. "That's the whole lesson," he said. "Right there. That's all it ever is." The city spread out below them, bright and indifferent, and full of every kind of person that exists, and the Caldwell Grand held them all up in its 62 floors of lit windows, and in the east alcove of the lobby 800 feet below. The orchids stood in their vase, and the glass table reflected nothing, and the chair by the window was empty now. The paper cup was still on the table, Nobody had moved it yet.